There's this progressive Pittsburgh with this progressive history, and that's not just about the Underground Railroad, but it's about the development of labor and gender advancements and that philanthropy even. There's just this whole idea of all of these people trying to create a beloved community. And then there is this other side of Pittsburgh. Being an American Studies scholar, I knew that Pittsburgh served as a microcosm of all of America.
Hello and welcome to Among Neighbors, a podcast about race, power, and privilege. I'm Andy Conti, director of the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University. And as always, I'm joined by Barbara Johnson, vice president of the Center for Race and Gender Equity at YWCA Greater Pittsburgh. Barbara, hello.
Hi, Andy. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. You know, people who've been traveling through the Lower Hill District probably have noticed a lot of changes taking place there. There's all these work crews are going in and they're adding a cap over the Crosstown Expressway and starting construction on the site where the former Civic Arena used to be. But I think people view this area differently depending on their unique perspective, right?
Absolutely. I think that there's definitely a history that even predates the long gone arena. I'm not a native Pittsburgher, but I certainly remember learning about the history of the Hill District and having colleagues who work there, and certainly the issues of power and privilege continue to rise in neighborhoods across the region.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it goes back to, you know, what your obviously your perspective is, like how old you are. You know, do you remember what was there before the Civic Arena? And then for people who grew up at the Civic Arena, you know, it was kind of a marvel to a lot of people, the idea that you had this huge arena with the, you know, had this aluminum dome that opened up and you could see the stars. And so for a lot of people, they're nostalgic for that period. But it's obviously that the Civic Arena itself caused a lot of pain for people who lived in that area originally. You know, for this episode we have today, we talked with someone who played a key role in that site's history and who, by coincidence, still has her hand in it today.
Yeah, you know, again, not being a Pittsburgher, I remember all the talk about the arena and, you know, how cool of a place it was. And my first experience there was going to a Prince concert. So I certainly was able to appreciate the joy of that space, but also, you know, on the flip side, having learned more about the history before that and having an understanding of how that community, the Hill District community, really spread into that space. So yeah, we have with us Dr. Kimberly Ellis. She works as a historian. She's definitely one of the local activists in our community, and she is a very amazing performer and writer. So she's joining us today to really give us some background and perspective about the Lower Hill District from a historical perspective, both its past and moving forward to its present, and how she sees the Hill District moving into a strong future. So let's get to our conversation with Kim.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Kim, I remember when I first met you, you did a presentation at Carlo on Black women. I think it was on women in the Black South, cowboys in the Black South, Black cowboys.
I did it on the Black West.
Yes. And I was like fascinated by that presentation. I was like, wow, because it was so rare, at least in my circles, that I would run across someone who was really doing research on Black people in America and, you know, these unusual pockets that you might find people that, you know, we just didn't learn about in our history.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually a fun, I was as excited to explore it because I chose to focus on the American West while I was in graduate school. And ironically enough, that is what led to me writing my dissertation on the Tulsa Massacre of 1921.
Right.
It led me there, but there's a lot of great information that we can gather when we look at the Black West, when we look at the Black South, in fact, and Reconstruction and everything. So I suspect we're going to talk about all of that today.
Absolutely.
What about, so you know, since you opened this up, what about Black Pittsburgh? Because I've seen stories where you talk about Pittsburgh being a destination on the Underground Railroad, and yet at the same time, we know that, you know, and we've seen it especially in the last few months, this idea that, you know, it's really become a hotbed for white supremacy as well. So where does Pittsburgh fit into all of that?
Yeah, Pennsylvania is very interesting and Pittsburgh is very interesting. So I'm a newer historian on Pittsburgh history. I want to say um I may have started, I guess, about 12 to 15 years ago, something like that. But I still say new because there's just so much that I'm learning. And this was not, literally my hometown was not the place that I chose to focus my studies upon, right? So I came back and I, I, um, I was literally working in the historical present. And so as a historian, I wanted to understand the context in which I was working because I came home and there were different things happening in the community and I needed to engage on an activist and organizing level, but I wanted to understand what's the context beyond. Now I came with the stories of my elders. I came with those oral histories, and that those things, they remain important. But I also needed to get more information, and so I just kind of started reading, started studying, going places, revisiting museums I visited when I was a child. Um, and so what I learned is that there really have been two Pittsburghs.
Mm.
And that's a part of the reason why there are still two Pittsburghs,
Yeah.
at least two. And so it was exciting actually to learn about Pittsburgh's progressive history. And that is what I have been choosing to remind everybody of, like, as a historian, as a public intellectual. And yet my physical self was battling present Pittsburgh and that racial history. Um, so I've been in like this dual relationship the entire time. And maybe now when we get there, we'll talk about it. Maybe now I'm finally able to like merge my two selves. Um, and so I came back and I was dealing with various entities who were basically like disrespecting our community, and also they were sharing a narrative that was only partially true. And I found that to be the case in the way that the media, represented our neighborhood. Um, and I also found it to be the case in the way that even the Black media was celebrating the present. They were honoring things that were happening, but they were suffering like disinvestment and like lack of profit the entire time. So, all newspapers started to go down, as you all know. Um, but it was painful to kind of watch the disintegration of the New Pittsburgh Courier um, as I was here, and like the only competing narrative to the mainstream narrative that the Hill District was just basically like a crime infested place that had in many ways like outlived its usefulness, I guess. And meanwhile, I live here, so what do you mean, and I live here as a Black professional. um, because I went to school outside of Pennsylvania. I went to Emory University in Atlanta, and then I went on to get my master's at the University of Connecticut, and then I went on to get my doctorate in one of the top 10 American Studies programs at Purdue University. And then I came back home to write my dissertation, and so that's kind of where it started. And yeah.
Do you
So
mind if we talk a little bit about our relationship, how we know each other? Because you were kind of like dancing around it just now, but I was a reporter at the Tribune Review for many years and was covering the casino process here in Pittsburgh when they were trying to decide where the casino was going to go. And the Penguins, of course, were trying to get the Isle of Capri casino for the Hill District. And that was one of my beats. And you came back around that time, I think, right? And not a lot of mainstream reporters didn't know who you were. And sort of suddenly you showed up and it was like, who is this Dr. Goddess and what's she all about?
yeah, it was interesting because I grew up and I am definitely a community girl. My first job was at Ozanam Cultural Center. I took dance class at Ammon Recreation Center. I went to St. Benedict the Moore grade school. So I went to St. Benedict the Moore church. So that literally covers the lower, middle, and upper hill, all of those activities. And I had friends all over. So everybody in the neighborhood, I won't say everybody, 'cause that's not fair, but many people in the neighborhood definitely knew me. They call me, it doesn't matter how old you are, you're always their baby. So, you get, hey, baby. Um, and so they knew who I was. And it was actually my neighbors who told me what was happening. And I was preparing, I had come back. Yeah, I had come back, and I was Dr. Goddess is my stage name. I have a background as a performing artist, but basically in terms of my family history, which I do realize is ironic, but um, in terms of my family history, uh, my my parents were not. My parents wanted me to get a good education. They did not think that investing in the arts was going to be fruitful for me. Um, and that was like early on, even when I was a child, right? So my uncle, August Wilson, he didn't become famous really until I was like 14 and 15. So I'm just saying that I was rooted in this idea that education was the most important thing I could possibly do to set myself on the right course in life. And um, let me see, why did I say that? Oh yeah, so when I came back home from grad school, and so I literally moved back into, I moved back into my mother's house, and it was supposed to be temporary, and I filled her basement with all of my belongings and lived in my childhood, bedroom home, and it was hilarious, but it was fun to be back with my mother. But so when I came back home, I was preparing for a show, and I remember, well, I had been home, I had been home like since the fall, but then let's say the spring came, right? And then I was preparing for this show, and it was like, I came home one day, and my neighbor handed me um some type of like kind of marketing, some type of, folder, not folder, but like, just some type of like flyer. And she was complaining about this group, and what they were trying to do, and I didn't really understand what was happening, but I listened to her. But I know that that's where I heard it from, and was actually a neighbor. And when I heard like they're trying to bring a casino here, and this is foolishness, and I don't know what this is. And so she had questions, I had questions, and it just so happened that, when I looked in my email, I saw that there was a community meeting coming up to talk about the Hill District, and the casino coming, and what this was all about. So I went to the meeting, and that's where it all began.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It always seemed to me like your stage performance and your street performance sort of all came together in that moment, and because you really became in many ways the face of that movement against opposition to the casino in the Hill District.
yeah, I mean, I went to the community meeting. Um, I learned a lot at that meeting, but I didn't intend on doing anything. I just um I saw like the tremendous opposition that community members had. And then I heard, but we haven't had development in here in so long, right? And I heard that too. And then I heard, but what about the jobs? And then I heard, we need to get the kids off the street. Um, and I heard many things, right? And so I learned later on how to sort out that information, and how to really manage everybody's expectations when it came to this development. And so I think the quickest thing is that I immediately thought about Atlantic City. I knew that there had been opposition, and that there had been that the dreams and the hopes in Atlantic City did not pan out for the residents. I knew that just from reading news. And I knew nothing about casinos. I didn't have I wasn't pro or con gambling. I'm all about personal freedom. So I'm like, if you want to lose your money, that's fine. But just the whole idea of the development in the casino. And so basically I learned that more community members did not want it, but some of them felt a little tied, like, if we oppose this casino, does it mean that we won't get anything else in our neighborhood ever again? And so that was sad to me. Those were sad options. And I started to really pay attention to development in a new way. And I'm so glad that I did. And so long story short, um, I remember going to another meeting, and now I'm not the only person that heard that the community did not want it and did not prefer it and preferred a different type of development. And so I looked to the NAACP, that like literally in the president's eyes, and I thought like, okay, what do you have to say? Because people were all going around. This was like in a second meeting. And the NAACP literally stated our official position is that we're neutral.
Oh.
And I was like, neutral? You're the NAACP. Like, what do you mean? And so all I know is that I started to hear more echoes of we're neutral. And so are we. And so are we. And with each claim of neutrality, my heart sunk. And I knew then that this can't happen. Like this, that's when the wheels started churning, and Ida B. Wells was leaping up. Her spirit was leaping out and saying, this is your job, sweetheart. And I was like, oh no, oh no. I mean, I kid you not. I remember just thinking, please I don't want this assignment. Like I don't, but you just can't say no. And so I just said yes. And then I just thought, well, let me make it very clear that the neighborhood, they don't want this. There's a handful of people that might think that this is okay, but most of the people don't want it. And that led me to stand out by myself. Wait, no, I'm sorry. No. I don't want to skip ahead, but it did lead me to stand outside by myself on Freedom Corner, but that was actually months later. Because I was working on this arts project, I decided I would make the debate and the protest and arts project kind of, interestingly enough, to get the public engaged in the conversation around whether or not, having this casino would be good. And also, art, I want to say art imitates life, but in this scenario, art was preceding life.
Yeah.
And so I made protest signs for this arts project. And I did this poem for the arts project and kind of framed what was happening in the Hill District, just the rumblings for the arts project. And I remember that it was called Fire. The show was called Fire. And I did it with Vanessa German and Rupa Singh. And it was called like FIRE. And so I ironically enough, I mean, this is so funny, but I used the budget to make the protest signs and things like that. And sure enough, I took all those signs home and I brought them back out when we actually had to have the real protest. Yeah. But people loved it. Like even from the performance, there were many Pittsburghers that came, so it wasn't just Hill residents, right? And we were down at Tammy Dixon. Oh dear, what's the theater? Bricolage. Sorry, we were at Bricolage. Yeah. And so it was engaging, right? It was engaging. It involved immediately the whole question, the whole debate, the whole concern involved like a clear microcosm of Pittsburgh and a clear interracial group and a different classes because they came to the performance. And so that's how it started.
Barbie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you talked about the interracial group at the performance, did you find there to be interracial support moving beyond the performance?
Yeah, immediately. Yeah. from what so I remember that the irony of the situation is that I learned that the last date for public input, and this is so important.
Oh, yes.
The last date for public input was like April. I don't want to say it was the first because that does actually sound like a joke, but I know that it was in April.
Mhm.
And our show was actually in May. And so people were thankful that I was saying something even after the date of public input, because, a lot of times these sort of private developments, they're not, they're public, right? But they're not public. They're not public in the way that they, I mean, they're public. It's just that, it's just not, I guess they're public, but they're not well publicized,
Yes,
if
not
you will.
advertised. Right.
Um, and so not everybody knows about it. And then on top of that, there was added insult to injury because they had paid um, some people in the projects, they literally the poorest of the poor, and
Oh.
paid them to come down and wear t-shirts and like rally as though they were in heavy support of the project. And I thought that everybody thought that was disrespectful, right?
Wow.
And then on top of that, the funny part about it, right, is that even after that day and leading up to the performance, people were mad because not everybody got paid. So now there's another news story where the poor people that you hired and that you had to put on t-shirts to come and rally and show the state, right? Because this was the state making the decision, the state gaming commission, and the people that you that you rallied, that you paid, to come down and rally to show the state that they had the neighborhood support. They're now, some of them anyway, are now complaining that they did not get paid. And like that, listen, it's all transactional, right? You did that, you know what I mean? You wanted to pay them for their performance, and they performed, and some of them didn't get paid. So they definitely were going to tell the news and other people because there was no investment. They didn't care, that it was just a fully transactional thing. So it was ironic, but that did happen. And so, yeah, I did find that there was support. And I think I initially started a newsletter. There was so much going on, but basically, like, I ended up starting a newsletter. I named the campaign. I did a lot of things because I just realized, like, oh, this will not get done if you don't do it. It was just very clear to me. And so I just did it. And I said, like, okay, well, if you're going to do it, you have to go all out. Like, you can't half-ass this. And so I did. And by all out, in my estimation, and I think this is really important for people to understand, is that all out in my book does not just include protesting. Protesting is not enough. And being in protesting is important, but it's not enough. So I went to all of those little boring important meetings that people don't, have time for or don't want to be bothered with. I went to those. The city council meetings, some of the meetings in Harrisburg, I even made it up there. It just all of those things had to happen. And the overall concern really was that we didn't want for the casino to be this primary sort of predatory, exploitative business in our neighborhood that was already struggling. We were, and not just struggling, but that we were also working hard to bring different development to our community. We had a lot of vacant land,
Yeah.
in our community, and Jake Mallions had already worked with McCormick, Barron, and Salazar to create the front door of the Hill District, which is Crawford Square. When he passed away, Salahuddin came in as our city councilman. He finished the job. He finished Freedom Corner. I mean, there had been those efforts, and I didn't think they should be for naught. And even on a very small level, this may seem very small, but we were still a community that was I guess this term has fallen out of fashion now, but we were still a food desert. And I remember, I think it was Salahuddin who made sure that the Hill Loop went over to the south side so that we could take advantage of that grocery store. And that seems very small, but it was major, because if you didn't have jitney money, if you didn't, you know, it was just very important for that to happen. So, you know, I just noticed with all
Dr.
those.
Ellis, I wonder, you know, to sort of loop it back into where we started out the conversation.
Sure.
I'm wondering how you think that moment fit into this idea of two Pittsburghs and, you know, the whole fight over putting a casino in the Hill District, putting the arena in the Hill District, how that fit in, because it, you know, it seems plausible. You say, well, you have the, you know, this outside community that was really dead set on having a hockey arena in the Hill District, and the casino was just a way to pay for the hockey arena.
Right.
And then at the same time, you had the, you know, the neighborhood saying, well, we're not completely sure about this. Some of us think it's a good idea. Some of us think it's not. How does that all fit into this concept that you were talking about, the two Pittsburghs?
Yeah, I mean, it really starts before then. It starts with the well, let me go all the way back, and then like I'll rush us forward. But basically, the Hill District, specifically like Prospect Hill, you know, we were our own community beginning as early as 1827 to 1829. We, you know, we were here first, literally, and that was something that I had to learn, right? And I was like, wait, wow, okay, wait, because I also discovered that there was sort of like this was like the early Pittsburgh. And so when I went back and I learned that this community was here and this was a free community, and that they were the first ones here, and that they established this place, and they were all abolitionists, or most of them, and they were all very active. They had businesses in Market Square, you know, from the bathhouse to, you know, the barber shops to the, well, the newspaper came later, but they welcomed Martin Delaney here. And this is all in the 1830s and 40s. And it blew my mind because I didn't know that. And meanwhile, as somebody who was an American and Africana Studies scholar, I could have told you other places, right, where I was like, oh yeah, the Underground Railroad went through there in Cincinnati, and I could run down the list. And I knew that Pittsburgh was a place, but I just had not arrived yet to understanding that it was right here in my neighborhood, and specifically right down the street from my house. So that placed me in historical context, right? There's that. Then it's also that when I looked and I said, wait, so these people, and then these people are abolitionists and they're running the Underground Railroad. And then there's the Pittsburgh Anti-Slavery Society, and William Lloyd Garrison came and Frederick Douglass came and convinced Martin Delaney to work on the North Star with him. And then he did. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, there's all of this history here. And then I'm learning about the evolution of the unions and the labor history, right? That's also very important. And then even some of the gendered history and the achievements that women have made. And I just said to myself, wait, first of all, I was actually taught about, so I was taught about the Underground Railroad, but more like Harriet Tubman, right? But I wasn't taught about the Underground Railroad here. So it mattered to me that I was relearning progressive Pittsburgh. And I just asked myself, like, why weren't we taught this? Why aren't we taught this? And why aren't we celebrating this as a part of our legacy? Like, this Pittsburgh should be known to be a progressive space. And instead, I'm right here battling this idea that my neighborhood isn't worth preserving. It was such an insult to me. You know, it was enough to be enraged. And then so there's that part of the neighborhood. And basically when the Fugitive Slave Law was passed in 1850, that's where many of the community left because they were unsafe, and they went and they moved to Canada to the true north. Wow. Okay, because I wonder, like, where did these people go? What happened? You know, so they're not that everybody left, but enough people left. You know, and so that put a dent in our community. And then you had the next wave. So this is me learning more about my history. You had the next wave of African Americans who were coming up from the South and a part of the Great Migration. And they joined the Irish immigrants, the Russian immigrants, you know, the Jews in the Lower Hill district, right? And all of those people, they lived separately yet together. And there was a lot of mixture and things like that. And I learned that it's that group of people that started to be displaced and encouraged to move, because Pittsburgh was chosen as the first urban redevelopment project in the United States of America. They were the first, and that's why we created the Urban Redevelopment Authority. Okay. And so to get that federal money, you know, literally the URA was established so that the money could come in and that they could spend the money. And so I, you know, I looked at the plans. I saw all the early architectural plans. Now I didn't do all this while I was protesting, just, you know, just so you know, this is, I'm giving you, you know, what I've learned over the years. But when you look at the architectural plans, I looked and I saw that there were supposed to be like at least 20 Washington plazas, you know, at least 20, and there was only one. And I'm looking and I'm like, well, wait a minute, what, you know, what happened here? And then as I did more research, then I saw, you know, quite frankly, my elders and my ancestors in their Sunday best protesting after the arena was built. And their sign said, you know, we want jobs, we pay taxes too. You know, we want, you know what I mean? Where are our jobs? And we want to work too. And then, you know, then you see the billboard, that famous billboard that we all know about at this point in time, that was organized by Frankie Pace, who was head of the Citizens, the Hill Citizens Review Committee or something like that. I'm messing up the name now, but and she's, you know, she's the
Can you describe the billboard for
yeah the billboard. So she got together with Model Cities, with the NAACP and the Poor People's Campaign and one other organization, and it said, attention City Hall and URA, no more redevelopment beyond this point, we demand housing for the Lower Hill. And that billboard was set on Center and Crawford Street, and that is where Freedom Corner is today. And in fact, that's why and the billboard is not the only reason why Freedom Corner was preserved. They would usually, all the marches would start basically at St. Benedict the Moor Church. And oftentimes the rallies would begin on the steps, and they would sit on the steps. And whoever the speakers were would stand on the sidewalk, and then they would, you know, talk to the crowd. And so those steps are replicated on the 3 steps there at Freedom Corner. I can go on and on about Freedom Corner, but point being that's, you know, so I'm learning my history, I'm stepping into it, and I'm also a part of it. And so, yeah, I thought that the way that other Pittsburgh, so the Two Pittsburghs, right? I can't describe this first group as anything other than white supremacists and racists, right? Because the way they described my neighborhood was a disgrace. You know, if you, I mean, I'm sure some of this stuff is still there, but if you look back at the old articles, every time there was a description of the casino and the fact that we were actually fighting against it, there would be so many racist and disparaging comments. It was just, it got to the point, I think this was before, you know, newspapers started to turn the comments off. You know, now we do that. Now we like shut the comments down because we know like this could be reflective of our brand, right? But back then there was no commentary. I listened to the radio programs, and literally people were like, oh hell, you know, don't they have crime there anyway? Why does it matter? You know, you go there, you get robbed, you go there, and it's just, and I'm thinking to myself, now listen, yes, there is crime, you know, and there are pockets, you know, but the second part is that I have now lived outside of Pittsburgh. I have now lived around where other white people live around, right? Yeah. I've now been in other communities. I read the police reports, I read the newspapers, and I'm like, oh no, white people, you don't get to have this narrative that only Black people, you know, are have crime, right? And I saw that, like, you know, and especially being on a private college campus, I saw the ways that the crimes that would occur on the campus, they would not be publicly reported.
Right.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like I saw the layers of privilege, the layers of what was, reported or not reported, stated or not stated, in order to protect, the private university, and in order to keep your statistics low, you know what I mean? So that people will still send their children to your school, and people will still send. So I said, like, that's not a game that you can run on me, and we're not going to play respectability politics to serve as the reason for which we deserve a casino in our neighborhood. This is not going to happen. And then, the other part is that when I started the newsletter, um, I got so many people across the racial spectrum, across Pittsburgh, saying, I live in Squirrel Hill, and we would never accept this in our neighborhood, sweetheart, keep fighting, right?
Wow.
And they would say, I live in Upper St. Clair, you know what I mean? You're doing the right thing, keep going. Like, people were writing from all across Pittsburgh. So I was already internally centered. And
Yep.
then I was like further situated that, like, yeah, so now this is two sides of Pittsburgh, hearing these very ridiculous narratives and these racist narratives on the radio. They were only peppered with for whatever reason, the racists, they seem to know how to get to the media better or faster. I don't know what it is, because there were other people writing op-eds, but there were more people writing directly to me, and I would publish some of their letters in the news, in the newsletter sometimes. And so that's how I discovered that there was two Pittsburghs, that literally there's this progressive Pittsburgh with this progressive history. And that's not just about the Underground Railroad, but it's about the development of labor and, and like I said, gender advancements and that philanthropy even. This idea, I even learned about Andrew Carnegie. Even more recently, I learned something new, but, there's just this whole idea of all of these people trying to create a beloved community. And then there is this other side of Pittsburgh, including the Pittsburgh. There were people that wanted slavery to continue, right? There were people that wanted to aid, and participate in returning people who were enslaved back to slavery. So there was always this battle. And for me, being an American Studies scholar, I knew that Pittsburgh served as a microcosm of all of America. There's two Americas, there's two Pittsburghs, at least two, and but there's only one body here that was like literally and figuratively embodying both sides and in real time. And that's how I operated with regard to the casino. And long story short, it was an uphill battle, to be honest with you, because the mayor was approving of it, the Penns were approving of it, city council. I mean, there were even my own rep at the time, Tanya Payne, God bless her, because she's passed away since then. But she was in support. And so I was definitely isolated and I felt alone, but I just kept going, and I did have other supporters. And I think the most important part of this is that the decision was going to be made by the state. And so what I was told is that while the public opinion process, the official public input process was over in April, that these people are still human beings. They still read the news. They still, they still watch television. And so my goal was to get on every station at every point, just to kind of bombard the media. And I got into a position. I mean, this is pretty funny, but this was performance, right? That like, I literally got up every day and then I had to like make up my face. And I am not someone that wears makeup all the time. And I was so angry, like I was a little angry about it. And I was like, you know what, do I have to? And I was like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Like, just keep going. The decision is, I knew that there was a deadline, right? So the decision was going to be made December 4th or something like that. And so I was like, just keep going until December 4th. Like, you have to do this. And then the word spread. So while I was at first alone on Freedom Corner, the next thing you know, 5 people joined me. Next thing you know, 10 people joined. And then the next thing you know, I heard from Derek Bell. I didn't know that Derek Bell was Professor Derek Bell, who has also since passed away, the Harvard law the Harvard law professor, like he was here in Pittsburgh, and that blew my mind. And he wrote me and he sent me some money, and he came and spoke at the rally, so then it was like a huge rally. That was the last one. And I incorporated art into it. I just, I felt like a protest doesn't have to be, I mean, you want to make your point, but it doesn't have to be like, demotivational. So I used it as a stage, and I am a performing artist, although I barely spoke. And the community came out. They did a great job. And I felt that I had done my job. And I also, because it was in November, I got a very keen lesson of this old time saying of being, what is it? Chilled to the bone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When I came home from those rallies, it took me hours to get warm. Like I literally felt my bones were chilled. So I did that, and I'm proud of the whole community. And I'm glad that we won. But I'll say that the flip side of the Two Pittsburgh things is that what enabled us to win, which is very important, is that Ed Rendell created what he called Plan B. And then, so that opened up the door that anybody who got the casino license, they had to pay for the arena. And I said, okay, perfect. Because we had always said, like, we're not against the arena. We're not against like the hockey team or anything like that. I wasn't against the Pens. It's just, we can't have this casino in our neighborhood. So you need to find another way, to have the arena be paid for. And that's what happened. Don Barden ended up winning, and he also passed away. Actually, now that I think about this. So Don Barden ended up winning the casino license, and in turn, he had to pay for the arena. And in turn, he gave a $3 million investment to the North Side, and he also gave a $3 million investment to the Hill District. And so in many ways, everybody won.
Yeah, so I wonder, we only have about 10 minutes left. And so but I wonder if you could bring it forward to us then. Here we are 15 years later. What does winning look like, and what has that meant for, the two Pittsburghs we've been talking about, and what has it meant for the Hill District?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here, so we had many different conversations, many different groups, many different investment opportunities and different things to happen. But I guess to put a bow on this, we're now at the point where the Hill District, even after that, had for the arena, the Hill District had wanted to create, this was based on Los Angeles, right? In Los Angeles, there was an arena that was being built, and the idea of a community benefits agreement, actually the very first one happened in Los Angeles, California.
The Staples Center, is that?
The Staples Center. Yeah. So and it was the fact that it was like near the airport and things like that, and so they needed to do things for the entire community, which included the airport. And so I somehow, and again, right, this is a labor union type of thing. So labor brought this idea to us. And maybe it was SEIU. I don't even know, but basically I know that the first contract came through SEIU. And so One Hill was created, and we did a community benefits agreement that was very mediocre. I mean, the process was great. The end result was not so great. And some of us signed it, some of us did not sign it. I didn't sign it because I didn't think it was good enough for our neighborhood. And I'm glad we did it though, because we did the first, community benefits agreement for the state of Pennsylvania. Why is this important? Because the next time, which is now, the community came together and did it's called a community collaborative. Oh, I'm forgetting the name, but basically the community collaborative implementation plan. That is created because the Lower Hill redevelopment project, the city gave the development rights to the Penguins. So the Lower Hill redevelopment project is a large, it's a partly publicly funded project and by many tax dollars and tax investments and whatnot. Therefore, the community created this community collaborative implementation plan, which is basically a community benefits plan. And they did a good job with that. And so that it's a legally binding thing. And the Lower Hill redevelopment project I'm now actually working on.
Yeah. So how was that reflected in what is being built in the Hill, right? I mean, it's starting to look like something now. So how is that going to make it different? How's the community's input going to affect that project?
So basically, F&B Bank is going to be the anchor tenant in a 26-story office tower that's going to be that anchor development to serve for the total redevelopment of the entire Lower Hill. And the 28 acres as we called it.
Right.
It's an at least a $1.5 billion project. And though the Penns own the development rights, this is still a partnership between the Penns, the URA, the SEA, and then F&B Bank, PJ Dick Construction Company, and the developer Buccini Poland Group, or BPG. And so I actually work for BPG. Bomani House is the vice president of Pittsburgh. And he's doing a great job. I love working with all of them, actually. And do
you feel like the community has a seat at the table now then? Is it going to be reflected in what comes out of this project?
Yes, it will.
Where is it located, Kim?
Right, literally in the lower, like in the parking lot.
So right by where that gas station used to be on Center on Fifth.
No. This is the Lower Hill. This is literally
where the arena was.
Oh. Okay, I got you.
That whole area that has been a parking lot, literally for my entire life. I mean, when I look back, I'm like, wow, So yes, I mean, this is, to be honest with you, this is the most important development in the city of Pittsburgh in easily the last 60 years.
Now, isn't there supposed to be a greenway too? Or is that different?
No, the green print does exist, the green print is a part of it, but we did our whole master plan. Like there's so many different levels, but the Hill District did a master plan. It needs to be upgraded. It was, we did that at least 10 years ago. We need to get and things like that. But the point is that this is the most important and the most expensive development in the last 60 years.
Wow.
And the community does actually have a legally binding seat at the table. And that is extremely important because we are creating a partnership that will serve as the basis for all the development throughout the city. And I think that it should serve as the model.
Yeah.
If this pans out the way it should, and I believe that it will, it should serve as the model for how to do development in Pittsburgh. So this brings us full circle because Pittsburgh was the first urban development authority. And now, even though this is like mixed with the private development, we are once again upon the precipice of history of how to do development in an equitable way and with the community that has suffered disinvestment over the years. That's what we're looking forward to. And I do have a very positive outlook on what will happen in the future.
Nice.
And to be honest, that to me is what is bringing the two Pittsburghs together. And this is where I feel like I can be my whole self because literally they hired me to literally write the narrative of the story of what we're doing and to center the Hill District's history. And we have adopted as our theme, honor and repair. That's our theme. And I wrote that.
Wow.
So talk about performance, right? Like the whole Lower Hill is going to be your next performance then. Right?
I mean, I guess. I guess. But I mean, I think that it's important. It's really the whole hill, right? Because it's the important part about the CSIP and what we're doing is that, yes, this Lower Hill project is going to be successful. It's going to be amazing. But it's meant to have shared prosperity so that we can develop the middle hill and the upper hill. There's a ton of vacant land in the hill. It's ridiculous. And as I've traveled around the world, I'm like, this just, we can't let it be. So this is the way to honor and repair every part of our history. And I'm very happy that we can do it together. I'm happy that this is an interracial, multicultural project.
Yeah.
And that will benefit all of Pittsburgh. It will benefit all of Pittsburgh, but it begins with the most vulnerable community, which is the historic Hill District of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I hope it does become a model for other communities that have the same issues. So, you know, there's empty homes and empty buildings and vacant land all through Homewood as well. And so I think that, you know, it's sad to see that in a city that has so much land and buildings and then they're empty, and then there's people who are living in poverty and homeless. It makes no sense, actually.
Yeah, and
So-
this is South Africa. You know, we need to
Right.
do a better job, and
Yeah.
and that can be a model, literally, like I said, like for the world. I that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Andrew, you said something. I didn't hear what you
Well, I was
said.
just, I didn't expect when we started out that you were going to bring it around to a happy ending at the end. So, but you did. So you brought us home. So I appreciate it. Thanks for being here today with us. You know,
Sorry.
that's okay. No, thanks for being here and sharing that, you know, sort of a walk down memory lane for the two of us at least. And, you know, hopefully everybody else enjoyed it. And I really appreciate that you were able to, and then bring it up to today and where we are today. And hopefully there's some lessons we can learn from that experience. I know it's been painful for the community in many ways. And so to have a positive outcome, you know, to feel like there's a positive outcome that we can carry forward, I think is terrific. So thank you.
I do. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. Good to see you again
Absolutely.
and hear what you're up to.
Thank you for listening to today's show with Dr. Ellis. Barbara, what do you think about what she had to say about the Lower Hill District and its past and its future?
You know, Dr. Ellis is just blossoming and bubbling with the history that she remembers and that she's experienced and that she's researched. So I'm always just in awe listening to her because I learn so much. I hope that the work that she continues to do creates a sustainable future for the Hill District in ways that allow all of the young people coming into the Hill District to really be able to appreciate the amazing history that has been part of the greater Pittsburgh community. So I think that there's going to be a good future ahead definitely under the support and leadership and guidance of Dr. Kim Ellis.
Yeah, and thanks for indulging us a little bit. It was nice for me to reconnect with her. I haven't talked to her in 15 years, you know, and I only had talked with her previously as a reporter who was covering the Penguins' attempts to get a casino for the Hill District, and of course she was right in the middle of all that. And so for me, it was nice to reconnect with her and to see her from another perspective. So.
Yeah, great conversation.
Yeah. Well, this episode of Among Neighbors was recorded remotely and produced by Eddie Robas. You can find all of our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts and at the centerformediainnovation.org. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.